Before the war with Iran, the U.S. economy was already in a fragile state. As Mark Zandi, chief economist for Moody's Analytics, points out, the war could make it worse. The job market is stalled, consumer sentiment is down, stubborn inflation remains above 2%, and interest rates are high. He adds, quote, "My angst around the possibility of a recession continues to rise." Joining us now, Professor of Public Policy and Economics at the University of Michigan, Betsy Stevenson. Go Blue. Betsy, as things stand right now, Goldman Sachs raised its probability of a recession in the next 12 months from 25% to 30%. Moody's Analytics puts those odds at just below 50%. Key business leaders are warning that the Iran war is going to likely exacerbate all of this the longer it drags out. How worried should we be?
Well, I think you just got some really good estimates of the probability of a recession. So I'm going to stick with glass, half full, which is it's more likely than not that we don't have a recession. So let's keep that in mind and not panic, but do realize that there's just a lot of headwinds right now. And there's a lot of things that could push the U.S. economy into a recession. And if I was making policy, I would be thinking really hard about how I could increase certainty for consumers and for businesses. Unfortunately, that's not really the approach this administration tends to take. And so I think that's why everybody is a little bit on tenterhooks.
Yeah, I would say optimism is a scarce commodity these days, so I appreciate a little bit of yours. Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan, of course, had a more positive outlook, like you do, on where things stand than Mark Zandi. He told shareholders this week that earnings and spending is healthy for both consumers and businesses, but he also did highlight the risks that they can't predict, like geopolitical tensions and wars, energy price volatility, trade uncertainty, large global fiscal deficits, and elevated asset prices. It seems as though investors on Wall Street are agreeing with him. Stocks are up slightly. Why does Wall Street seem to be brushing this off, seem to be a little bit optimistic or positive about talks with Iran?
Well, honestly, that's where some of my biggest concerns come from is what might be over-optimism in the stock market about where the economy is headed, because we are balancing a bunch of different risks. So there's the Iran risk, there's global trade, there's the a overall contraction of global growth, which is almost certainly going to happen. That doesn't mean recession, but if we're shaving off of global growth, that reduces demand for everybody because we live in a global marketplace. So all of that's going to slow the economy. And you put that on top of American consumers who are spending money they don't have, essentially. And there's a real question as to when they're going to say, wait a minute, we can't keep spending what we don't have, and really cut back on spending, which it might not pull us into a recession, but it's certainly a contraction that will lead to a contraction in earnings, which is why I think there's a little bit of over-optimism happening in the marketplace right now.
And speaking of spending, a new cost estimate for the war in Iran comes from CNBC. They spoke with a public policy expert at the Harvard Kennedy School. We're looking at a total of $1 trillion for American taxpayers. How is that going to impact our deficit and future spending bills?
Well, everything comes with a or what. What would we do with that money instead, right? It could be that, you could look at it as deficits or debt. We just going to, grow it as debt, but at some point we have to pay it back, or maybe we cut spending. So what could we have instead of a war in Iran? And I think a lot of people might be thinking better health care, child care, all the sorts of things that President Trump has told us we can't afford. And yet it looks like we can afford to spend the money. We're just choosing to spend it on something else. So I think Americans need to start thinking about, where do we really want our money to be spent? And did we want to spend $1 trillion on a war in Iran?